Hey guys, what's going on? This is a recording that I'm making for CYB511 Lab2.2. Give me 1 second and let me share my screen so that you guys can see it. All right, you guys should be able to see my screen now. And let's take a look at what the lab for this week is. So in this week's lab, we're using Nmap to conduct a variety of different scans on our lab network that we've created for the cybersecurity 511 class. So the first task in this lab is we are to use Nmap to conduct a ping sweep of our target network IP range and save the output to a file. So in my VirtualBox environment, you'll see that I have 3 different virtual machines running. I have a Kali Linux box, which is what I'm going to be using to do most of our commands from. Then I also have an Ubuntu VM running. I think it's running Ubuntu 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And then I have a Metasploitable 2 VM also running. And the way I connected all these 3 VMs together was I created a NAT network. So we go into File, take a look at Tools, and then go into Network Manager. We'll see here that I've created a NAT network, and I've just named it CYB, and I've assigned it the IP range of 192.168.1.100.0, 192.168.100.0/24. There we go. And I've checked off the enabled DHCP. And so if we go here to the Kali, go to settings on this machine. And if we go to network, we'll see it's connected by NAT network. Click OK. And I did the same for the other 2 as well. So on the Ubuntu, connected to NAT network. And Metasploitable is also connected to the NAT network. Now, if I open up my Kali VM, I already have some command prompts open just to refer back to in a little bit. I'm just going to open up another command prompt here and show you guys the IP and show communication between all 3 devices working. So just do a quick ifconfig. So the Kali's IP is 192.168.100.9. We go to our Ubuntu machine. Go to our Ubuntu machine. I'll just say clear. Let's do an ifconfig here. So this is 192.168.100.8. And lastly, if I go to the Metasploitable VM, let's see what's going on here. There we go. So I do if config 192.168.100.10. So let's just do a quick ping from the Metasploitable to the other 2 VMs. So we'll do ping 192.168.100.9. So again, plot back from the Kali, and let's do the same for the Ubuntu. We're getting a reply back. All right, good. Let's do a quick test here. 100.9 to Kali, and we get a ping. We'll just do the same for the Metasploitable VM. And again, we got a ping. Great. And now let's move on to here. We'll do a ping to the other 2, 192.168.100.8. Awesome. And then let's just use this. And as you see, communication between all 3 devices is working. All right, so we're done with that. Now going back to the lab. So we had to use Nmap to conduct a ping sweep of our target network IP range and save the output to a file. Now, ping sweep is used to kind of identify the different devices that are connected to the network. So ideally, when we do the ping sweep, we should see 3 different machines detected on this network. So let's go here, and right here, you'll see that I ran the command for a ping sweep nmap-sn, and then our target network range 192.168.100.0/24, and then the -0n is the command to save the output to a txt file. And I just named the txt file pingsweep2.txt. So you'll see here that it detected 3 different Oracle VirtualBox machines. And these are indeed the IPs of our virtual machines right here. And if we go into our file explorer on Kali, we'll see pingsweep2.txt is right here. Let's go ahead, open this file up. And we'll see the output is saved. The next task we were given was scan the IPs we found for open web server ports and use nmap to find running services and operating system versions. So if we go here, where is it? Give me 1 second, guys. All right, yeah, so the first portion was scan for open web server ports. So you'll see here, the next command I ran was nmap-p80,443. So that specifies port 80 and port 443. And then I entered in the 3 IPs of our 3 VMs, and then again saved the output to a text file. So you'll see here, the scan for our Ubuntu box, port 80 and port 443 were closed. The nmap scanned for our Metasploitable box. We see that port 80 was open for service HTTP. And for our Kali machine, both ports were closed. So there we have that part of the lab answered, and I'll save that to this text file right here, webports.txt. If we open this up, there we go. And then the next command I ran was to find the service version, to find the versions of different services running on our Kali box. So if you take a look, nmap-sv-f, and then I entered in the commands for the different IPs that I have, and it gives you the different service versions that are open. So you'll see here that when scanned 192.168.100.8, it just gave us hosts is up and all the ports were in the ignored state. And then when we get to the Metasploitable box, we see a lot of services that are open on different ports, and it gives us the exact service version that's running. For the Kali box, we get the same. The ports are ignored. And yeah, so there's that. I think I forgot to do for OS version, so give me 1 second. Let me just do that real quick. And that is going to be capital O for OS. And we'll just save that into a file called OS version. And let's run that. And here we go, guys. We got the output as for this as well. Scan report for 192.168.100.8. 1,000 ports scanned. More state not shown. It gives us the MAC address, and it says too many fingerprints matched to give specific OS details. So we couldn't find the specific OS for our Ubuntu box, which is okay. If we scroll down to the Metasploitable box, we do get an OS version that tells us it's Linux 2.6.9 to 2.6.33. So it kind of gives us a little bit of a range. And then the Kali box, again, there's too many fingerprints matching the OS, so we couldn't get an exact OS version. Now, the last portion of this lab, it asked us to explore the various command line options that Nmap offers while scanning an online host you discovered within your target IP range. Monitor the bandwidth usage changes for different options, with the use of collecting as much information as possible against resources it takes to gather that information. So for that, we tried out a couple different commands on our Kali box. So if we open that up, let me get to the proper command. Let me just minimize a couple of these tabs here. All right, so let's start off with some of the commands that are less resource intensive, right? So if we go to just running an nmap ping sweep, right? That's not really going to take up too much bandwidth because it's really just sending out ICMP pings, ICMP packets to kind of detect what's on the network. So if we take a look at the logs here for received and transmitted packages. Additionally, I should mention that I was using vnstat command line utility to monitor bandwidth during the different nmap processes. So I split the terminal in half and have two different command prompts going. So when I ran the nmap-sn on the target network, we see that we see the receive and transmission rates, and then we also see packets per second in the middle here. So you'll see that our received rate is right around, if we average these two out, I would say right around 2 KB per second. And we see transmission rates are 3 packets per second to 4 packets per second. And we see the transmission rates are right around 61, 62 KBs per second. And so, yeah, we can see that that's a good benchmark to see what other commands are going to be utilizing, right? So next, if we go to just running a simple nmap-p just on 192.168.100.10, that's our Metasploitable box, we see the transmission rates right here, I believe. We see that's way lower. So these aren't really taking up too much, right? It's a direct query, I guess, if you want to call it that. And then once we go down to running the more intensive scans, like the service version, right? So we look at that, we see that the transmission rates are going really high into the hundreds, and then it drops back down into the ones, but then it spikes back up to almost 1,000 in transmission and received rates. So we see how much bandwidth that's really taking up and how resource intensive that it really is. Since it was so much, I did stop this a little early and then just ran another nmap query here where I specified the ports, and then I wanted to know the service version. So it's still kind of like a direct query, but it's still digging a little bit deeper to find the exact service version. And we see that it did give us the status open, closed with ports, and it even gave us the service version as well. And this, again, you can see that it did take up a little bit of bandwidth here. And we'll see. And then you see all these zeros just because this is continuous monitoring until I hit stop on it. So once I hit Control C, we'll get just some quick stats on like the entire duration of when it was running. To show you guys an even better one of just how resource intensive some of these nmap commands can get, I have another command prompt open here. And with a little bit of digging, I found that this command right here is one of the most resource intensive commands that are out there for nmap. So the command nmap-p- -sv -sc 0-t4, and then you specify a target. That is one of the most resource intensive scans that you could do. p-p it scans all. So the -p and then the dash after the p, that specifies that you want to scan all 65,535 ports, increasing the amount of, and this would increase the amount of traffic generated as we use each port. Then the SV enables version detection. The SC runs default nmap scripts, and they just perform some additional checks as it's scanning. The -O attempts to determine the operating system of the target, and then -T4 uses aggressive time settings, which means that probes are sent more frequently, increasing the bandwidth usage. And you could even change the -4 to -5, which would be an even more aggressive scan on the target device, which is 192.168.100.1. And as you see here, if once I hit run on this command, you see just how many packets it generated and how long this query actually went for before it finished off right here. And I would say this query ran for quite a bit of time. I would say almost like 3-4 minutes, and that's just to scan one target. But I would imagine that if you extended this query to an entire subnet, it might take even longer than maybe like a couple, like 30 to 45 minutes, maybe even an hour. But you see just how much information that this one query was able to get us and how much detail that it really gave us in this query. So it is quite a lot more detailed than just a regular nmap query. But yeah, so as you saw that when you're running the more intensive queries, the bandwidth definitely gets eaten up a lot more frequently and a lot faster than just like your standard ping sweep, right? The ping sweep just took up like, I believe it was in the 60s, but then you see a command like this where you're putting a lot of different parameters into it. It's eating up bandwidth in almost the thousands, and I would say they're about from like 800 to almost 1,000. So that is quite a significant portion. And this last one here, this is another bandwidth utilization monitor. It's called IFTop. It's not really doing anything right now since I'm not running any commands against it, but if I were to run another command of this caliber, you'd see this fill up as well and show you the bandwidth spikes like as they're happening. And then the last portion of this lab was to weigh the use of collecting as much info as possible against the resource it takes to gather that information. So I would say that when you're running a scan that's giving you a lot of information, kind of giving you all the bells and whistles, it does provide you with more detail and more information about the different port services and potential vulnerabilities that could exist on the machine. Something to note is that these scans are more intensive, but they can be useful when they're being applied to situations like incident response. Like you would, in those kinds of situations, it would be nice to have as much information as possible and as much information as you could gather just to formulate a better opinion and a better decision about what's currently going on in that incident. One thing to note is that these more intensive scans that provide you more details, they do eat up a lot of bandwidth, which could affect other devices on the network. Luckily, in our case, this is just lab environments, so it's not really affecting anything else, but it is something to take into consideration when applied in a production environment. One additional thing that got me thinking was when you're doing an intensive scan, such as the one I just showed you guys most recently, I feel as if these more intensive scans, they would definitely trigger some kind of alerting on the IDS or firewalls in place in an organization. So it's definitely something to take into consideration that the more intensive a scan is, the more likely it would be to trigger some kind of alert. Um, whereas if you're just doing like a ping sweep, it's quicker, it's less intensive on system resources and bandwidth. It's going to give you just quick information that you need when things are time sensitive and when you're in a time crunch. And in situations where you can't just be waiting around for a scan to finish, maybe within like a half hour to an hour. And I guess another thing, it's less likely to be caught by an IDS or an alerting system on the firewall. So it I would say the I would say that there are pros to doing a more intensive scan, but it kind of just depends on the situation where you're in. Are you in a situation where you need all that information, or are you in a situation where you just need something quick? And in that case, it would be better to use a less intensive scan. Um, all right, guys. I think that's about it for this lab 2.2. That's a wrap. Yeah, so lab 2.2, I feel like this is a really great lab to give us some exposure into scanning of network scanning and just different commands within the Nmap suite. And it was it was cool to see how as you get more intensive in each scan to see just how much bandwidth it is eating up. So yeah, thanks guys. I'll see you next time.